Okay, so now we've got something very special. One of our guests of honor, Mr. Richard Newman, is known for playing Vector Prime, but he's a character who goes a lot deeper than a lot of characters, certainly. But there's a lot more depth to him than a lot of people think. So I'm about to welcome to the stage two guys who need no introduction, but I'm going to give them anyway. Mr. Chris McFeely and Mr. Jim Sorensen.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Jim, something's different.
Oh, a shower. I don't usually do that.
No, I think anybody in the audience who knows you is wondering the same thing I'm wondering. What's going on with the hat?
Oh, okay. Fair play. So, I went to the G.I. Joe convention this year. I thought it was going to be the last one. It's not, which is great. But I went.
Your mic's not working.
My mic's not up.
Hello.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. I went to the G.I. Joe conference this year, and I discovered that they made an action figure out of my face, which I think we might have a picture of. Can we? There we go. And it's a character called Skymate. He's Australian, so naturally he's got a pink kangaroo on his hat because he's Australian, and I'm pretty sure that's mandatory for them to wear. So yeah, I had this made up, and I figured Auto Assembly likes me for my TF Nation. I'm known for my hats in Birmingham. There we go, Birmingham. Is David coming to beat me up? And so I figured, yeah, why not? So I'm debuting this hat here for you. So thank you. But we're not really here to talk about hats, or only a little bit here to talk about hats. We're here to talk about Ask Vector Prime.
I feel like you should lead, Jim. You're the one who knows all about it. You've been, well, I suppose you didn't start it, but you've become synonymous.
That's an interesting point. So does anybody here know what Ask Vector? Raise your hands if you know what Ask Vector Prime is. All right, that means plenty of people don't. So back, what was it, 2005?
Yeah, Cybertron was on the air.
So back in 2005, Hasbro, on their Hasbro.com website, started a feature called Ask Vector Prime. And in Ask Vector Prime, kids mostly, but obviously grown fans too, submitted their questions to the website, and then Vector Prime would answer them. So rather than have somebody from Hasbro answer them, Vector Prime would answer them from his point of view, which meant that because he could sort of see all of time and space, he could give straight answers, and he could give shilling answers. I always enjoyed when he would shill a set of DVDs. He shilled the Beast Machines DVDs and suggested everybody buy them because he can do that, because he can see our world, because he can see all of time and space. But he also would give real answers. Yes, Override is a girl, he said. That was something that the Transformers fans at the time were excited to get confirmation about that. And then sometimes he would dodge a question, like someone would say, is Primus cool? And he'd say, cool to the touch? No, he's quite warm. And he would dodge questions. I like that mix of voice of sometimes a straight answer, sometimes a shilling answer, sometimes dodging the question. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then...
Well, then you came in.
and then I came in about...
Along came Jim.
About 3-4 years, whenever I did the All-Spark Almanac, so around 2008, I think about 2008 I did the All-Spark Almanac, and there's no Ask Vector Prime in there, but we were doing an adaptation of, we did the book that was supposed to be the guide to Transformers Animated, and we came up with the conceit that we do the whole book in universe, which was easy for the bios, the characters talked about each other, but it was a little harder for the episode guide. So we played around with the format, and eventually we said, okay, the characters can write up reports about it, and sometimes we get more creative. And one of the ones that required us to get more creative was they had done a comic and animated. The first animated comic, issue number 1 of The Arrival, was just a retelling of the 3-part animated pilot. And they retold it from different perspectives, from the perspective of characters that we hadn't necessarily seen in the episode itself, and it got a little bit more inside their heads. But the whole point of it was, all the different viewpoints, which was really hard for me to tell in universe. And I went back and forth with myself and with my partner Bill Forster about how to do that. And eventually I came up with this idea that maybe Vector Prime, from beyond time and space, is recording all these observations about how Blitzwing feels, how Lugnut feels, how Sentinel Prime feels. And I rediscovered this voice that I really liked. So then, a couple of years later, when we did the second Allspark Almanac, we had a whole bunch of room for bonus text, little hidden Cybertronics, which is a funny story.
Yes, I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
So we'd hidden lots of little messages in the first Allspark Almanac, written in Cybertronian language. I developed a language from Beast Wars that would let you read the screens in the actual show, and you could see what they were saying. Sometimes it was funny things like E and Corlett, go F yourself. And sometimes it was just straight up like, they were talking about a shield failure, and it would say shield failure. Anyway, I let you translate all that. So I used those texts to make little nods to things like Iron Maiden, a band Bill's a big fan of, and video games, all kinds of stuff. And I didn't think anybody was going to read them. I thought it was just visual design elements. But then this idiot... I don't know what happened. It was like, I think we figured out someone, I wasn't the first person to figure out that it all meant something. And I just sort of fell down the rabbit hole with it. And then came along to the second one. Well, what happened was we didn't expect anybody to translate it all, and he did. So then we took that as a challenge. And we said, well, if he's going to find all the references, let's give him some references to find. Let's do some things that aren't web searchable on Google because they're images and they're not, or they're videos and they're not text that's easily searchable. And one of the things we did was we wrote out new answers to Ask Vector Prime. And it was sort of just a lark, but people took it maybe more seriously than they should have.
There were lots of answers in there. Like you say, there's some very jokey answers, the dodge answers, the comedy ones, and then other times she would answer huge questions and the whole reason plagued the fandom for nearly 30 years.
And some of that was Hasbro had their own ongoing Q&A at the time, where you could rather than ask a character, you could ask Hasbro themselves, what's going on with X, Y, and Z. And again, sometimes they shilled, and sometimes they dodged, and sometimes they gave really great meta-continuity answers.
That was one of my favorite ones from the almanacs was, the question was, Dear Vector Prime, who is Dion?
D-I-O-N, and he said, Dion, Celine Dion, I love Titanic. It was a dodge. I didn't want to answer that.
You knew not to. You don't answer that one.
No, you don't. So you dodged that one.
But it was the center of a lot of attention.
It did. And one of the reasons I chose to answer the ones I did was because Hasbro had been playing with this format of giving great sort of, BS-foo answers, and I said, well, I think I could do that. I think I could try my hand at that, and I did some where I tried to go down the rabbit hole, and I think some people hated it, but I think most people sort of liked it and thought it was funny, and then people...
There were arguments.
I've caused arguments in my time. It's been known to happen.
The weekend's not over.
But then it came back once or twice. Whenever the Almanac came back, it came back. Like, we did a supplement in a comic book, an Stunticon job, which brought animated back. We brought Vector Prime back, I think it was one or two questions, but we did that. And then the complete Allspark Almanac, I did it again, which you haven't translated yet.
You broke me, Jim. I can't. I physically and mentally cannot.
I did so much stuff for you this time.
It's sitting on my coffee table. It's been sitting there since it came out.
And then I sort of left it aside for actually, no, that was 2014, late 2014, early 2015.
It's weird how small the gaps of time are, because Cybertron seems like it was quite a while ago.
It was, it was 11 years ago.
But it was only 3 years in between that and your first go-around.
Yeah, I've been doing it, I've been going back to this well every few years. But regardless, for the last, I'd say 3 or so years, the Transformers Collectors Club has been doing they've been making Facebook features where the characters will set up the Bacon stories in universe by talking to each other and having little log entries. And They brought 8-link back, right?
Yeah, Tornado, one of the stars.
Tornado. And then they were doing Axiom Nexus News, and they brought me into that, and I wrote a bunch of those answers, some of which started arguments. But then I said, hey, what would work really well in this format is Ask Vector Prime. And then, maybe despite their better judgment, they said, okay, you can do that. And I got rules about what questions I could answer and what questions I couldn't. And that would change over time, partially in response to the audience and partially in response to changing situations.
Because before, with all the almanac ones you just made up.
Yeah,
and the ones on the hospital website were submitted blindly, and we never saw them. But with the case of the Facebook ones, it was an open submission there on Facebook.
Everybody could see all the
questions in the comments.
And we didn't feel compelled to answer all of them. We had some bad questions, but we had a lot of good ones. So we started answering questions 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 a day, and
Just kept growing.
And we kept going for months, for 9 months. We were sort of going to almost every corner of the Transformers multiverse and naming characters, and we did a lot of naming universe. I got bored of it after a while. I think everybody got bored of it after a while, except for the 2 or 3 people who really liked that.
Novelty groups.
Well,
Primax.
I'll say one of the reasons we did that was because when we were trying to keep our output, it's like we could do one of those a day, and it's just math. You look up when it came out, and you're done. Boom, done. And they never got bounced. They never did. Sometimes you write answers, and somebody would say no. And say, I mean, it happens, it's a collaborative medium. But sure enough, nobody ever says, well, you can't name that universe, because everybody already knows what the name of the universe is. We're just, I guess, establishing it on the wiki. But we got kind of bored of just doing wiki stuff for wiki.
Well, yeah, I mean, as Jim said, there were arguments caused by certain bits and pieces of it, and there was a recurring situation where people would settle arguments about how things should be classified by just going and asking Vector Prime to classify them for them. It was this weird sort of...
Well, I wouldn't always be necessarily privy to, because I don't spend all my time on wiki, so...
But it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you started needing...
Yeah, and then we started wanting to sort of vary it. So we thought it would be fun to bring Sideways in. And, Sideways was this character who... There had been also arguments about sort of how to classify Sideways, if he was the same guy in every universe, if he was a different guy.
Arguments are a recurring theme in the makeup of this?
Arguments are a recurring theme in the makeup of this, aren't they? But that's not why we just brought him in because we thought it would be fun. And we just kind of merged all of them into one anyway. We said, okay, he's got this body, he's got this personality, he's got Headmaster. It's all of them, he sees all of them together. And he got to be a different, because Vector Prime is a very stately, dignified voice, and he doesn't want to descend to certain levels, and even bad questions he tries to answer. He might answer with a joke or a dodge, but he sort of tries to treat the questioner seriously. And in fact, Sideways did not.
No.
Sideways didn't care. He would, any sort of speculative question, his answer was sure, why not? Just let's go with that. Clearly in a way that it may or may not be. He's not answering the question at all.
But things got to a point where you couldn't just write things yourself.
Oh, well, you know what? I was trying to do 5 a day, and it was daily. It was 7 days a week. And we wound up going from May through February. May of 2015 to February of this year. So 9 months or so of this. So we brought in other people to help write things. And we also brought in other people when there was an area of Transformers lore that they were specifically responsible for. So Hirofumi Ichikawa is a guy, he's a Japanese guy who does a whole lot of the Binaltech fiction. And he had been writing for Binaltech and Alternators, and then that line stopped, and he had a whole bunch of story in his head that hadn't gotten out yet. So we got him on board, and he wrote this maybe 5-page answer that just walked through a whole bunch of stuff about Optimus Primal, and why Air Attack Optimus Primal existed, and how it all fit into his head and the Binaltech. So it was really neat just to publish that.
And we had lots of fan contributors as well. I wrote a few things for it.
Yeah, let's talk specifically about it. I used Chris as a sanity check, because when you write about any part of Transformers lore, you kind of, it's a lot of responsibility in some ways. You don't want to, you want to treat the different areas with respect. So sometimes if I wasn't sure about an answer, I'd ask you, does this make sense? Is this respectful? And sometimes you said yes, sometimes you got to fix it.
Sometimes like,
Once or twice you're just like, no, let's not do that.
And then it just, I can't really remember, because we went back and forth on a lot of things, we brainstormed a lot of things, there are things we wrote that are credits, that are people, you and I try to, it's Ask Vector Prime.
Right, it's not.
You break the universe if you pretend.
Vector
If
Prime
you don't play pretend.
That's what all these. But, there came a time when, because Vector Prime was what's called a multiversal singularity, in theory, before the end of last year, Vector Prime and all of the 13, there was only one of them in the multiverse. Now they might manifest differently in different areas of the universe. They might have different. If you went to the evil Shattered Glass universe, maybe Vector Prime would be evil.
Now, you guys know about it. It's kind of a nonsense idea that never really factored in. It was every time they appeared anywhere, all it ever resulted in was out-of-universe explanations by creators for why they weren't acting like a singularity in that story. So it got to a point where
well, Fun Publications, who does the Transformers Club, decided to get rid of them. So they had a big story where all the 13 would get together and break the universe, and there'd be no more singular. And I knew about that way. There's hints in the Allspark Almanac about it. I knew it was coming.
that far back.
If you read some of the Q&A from the Ask Vector Prime from there, he says something about he senses a change coming. This is how it works, but I sense it might be different soon. So there's foreshadowing.
But then it happened. It happened in the comic.
Well, we knew when it was going to happen, and the Fan Club magazine gets mailed out over the course of about 3-4 weeks. So right around when he was supposed to go to a different story, we had him leave Ask Vector Prime to go to this different story because there's only one of them, so he couldn't be in 2 places at once. And when he left, we thought that the Sideways experiment was pretty much a success. People really seemed to like it, and we ended it before it got too old. So we started bringing in more guests, columnists. So we had
I lost track on many.
we had 6 or 7. We had Grimgrams.
Grimgrams was there. Psykill.
Psykill was a lot of fun. We had Space War, which was a character that hadn't existed. It was an unreleased toy that eventually, sort of, the deco got released as Astro Train.
With a different head.
Yeah, different head, different mini-cons.
But he decided to turn her into a character, and she became, I'll say it, Jim, she became inexplicably popular as far as I'm concerned. I don't get that one at all.
Well, the idea behind her was she had Hulk adventures. I'm a big fan of John Carter of Mars, and Edgar Rice Burroughs sort of stuff, and Doc Savage. And I thought, well, this is a character who could go to different places in space and time and have adventures, have little Hulk adventures. And I think the fact that it was a woman helped.
Yeah. And then as we were talking about in the GoBots panel last night, if anyone was at the GoBots panel last night, there were the Space Warp and Psychill proved so popular that they got spun off into their own Facebook segments.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about Ask Vector Prime is I think just because we were so consistent with it is by the time we ended it, we had about 1,100 subscribers. And those are just the people that sign up for the immediate alerts. I mean,
that's a larger number of people than people that buy more than meets the eye through Diamond in North America.
Yeah, I mean, there's no.
Yeah, they're like 10,000 copies more or less for Transformers issues in North America.
But I said 1,000.
But you said 11,000.
No, I said 1,100.
Sorry.
No. There's 1,100 daily subscribers. We had we had something like 30,000 active users.
There you go.
Those are the people that interact with, so they give a like or they post a question or something. Or dislike. I don't think they had dislike back then. That's relatively new. But, the new emoticons. But, we had about 30,000 active users, and I think we had about, I don't know, 400,000 page views or something like that. I mean, we had a lot of people looking at it. So we did a poll to say, who's your favorite guest host? And I don't remember, but we had I think over 1,000 responses.
Oh.
No, maybe it was about, I don't know, maybe it was like 300 each for Psychill. Psychill and Space Warp came ridiculously close to each other. Like out of maybe 700 answers, they were only 4 or 5 apart. So I said, okay, we'll just do both. Yeah, we'll just do half as much each.
I didn't have anything to do with Space Warp, but helped out with.
You wrote 2 episodes of GoBots, right?
We brainstormed a few. We co-wrote the 5-part miniseries pilot for
did.
season 2 of Challenge of the GoBots.
A virtual 5-part GoBot episode.
Yeah, you were like, because when Cycle had been temporary host, you'd recapped a few real GoBots episodes and written a few new GoBot stories.
I think about 10 or 15.
And then I was like, you should do 65 of
that
full,
your idea?
yeah, I remember saying to you were like, I don't know about 65. I'm like, 65. You do a full 65 episode season of brand new crap 1980s identical children's cartoon plots about the GoBots.
We had what are some of the plots I know yours.
Yeah, we had the shrinking episode. We had the environmental episode.
The environmental episodes. Yeah, they meet talking whales, and the talking whales wind up hooking up with the renegades because they get tricked.
The Harlem Globetrotters stopped in for an episode. What else? Characters getting superpowers.
We did a Clips episode.
The werewolf episode.
Yes. I don't think he was actually. Everybody thinks Scooter's a werewolf, but he's not. I mean, we just had a lot of fun just aping that style.
And I wrote the Christmas episode because there was a GoBot called Good Night with a K. So of course the Christmas episode was called And to All a Good Night.
But it was a lot of fun to do that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it, again, caused a lot of arguments.
Yeah,
it did. But I enjoyed it. I just kind of removed myself from the arguments and just was like, it's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, but all sort of good things had to come to an end. And when Vector Prime came back from breaking the singularities, it didn't make as much sense for him to be the omniscient observer of time and space.
He couldn't keep doing it. So feature.
Some of it was just the logic of the universe.
Yeah.
So he was the axiom nexus, or he was the one who'd always been there. And so his perspective shifted. So we did a little video skit. We did a little video play as part of this too, where Vector Prime comes back at the end, and that was fun. And then he said, "Well, I have to go. I'm going to have to leave soon." And then we did the story. We let people get used to the idea of leaving. It's the grandma's on the roof joke, and you know that one, yeah?
I don't know that one. No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so a man asks somebody to house sit for him. He asks his brother to house sit for him, and his brother says, "Sure, I'll house sit for you." He goes, "You got to feed my cat." He goes, "Fine." He goes away for a couple of weeks. He comes back. He says, "How's my cat?" He goes, "Oh, dude, your cat got run over by a car." He goes, "You can't just blurt it out like that. You can't just say your cat got hit by a car. You gotta go slow. You gotta say, oh, the cat stuck up on a roof." And then I asked, a day later, did the cat come down with you? He did, but he fell down. He broke his paw. He had to take him to the vet. And the next day I asked, "Oh, how's the cat?" It's like, "Oh, the pocket. We had to produce it." We had people used to the idea. He goes, "Okay, fine." And then a month later, he goes out of town, and he calls his brother. He says, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes at home. He goes, "Oh, I got bad news. Grandma's on the roof." You ease people into this. So we said, okay, Vector Prime's going to be going away, and he went on a journey.
Yeah, he was sent off on a mission to Nebula.
Yes,
he was given a happy ending.
Yeah, and
he got to fall in love with his bodyguard and become Conjunct Centura, and then.
It was a really sweet video, and it was really Richard report. And in fact,
yes, I think it's time. I think it's time.
We were hoping that maybe Richard would be able to join us.
All right.
So why don't we play the video? This is how we end. This is the last Ask Vector Prime we ever did, and why don't we give it a play?
Incoming message. Friends, I bring you good cheer from the planet Nebulous. The voyage was long and not without its share of inconveniences and, yes, perils. Scorpia, Galaxy Shuttle, and I faced them down and have grown close in the process. I will confess that my farewell to Galaxy Shuttle carried with it a certain melancholy quality. I hope to see his noble spark again. I am confident that Scorpion at least shall share in this new chapter in my life. We have arrived here on Nebulos without harm, and with the help of Safeguard, I have assumed my disguise on the planet's surface. I look forward to exploring its variegated environs in the hollow matter form I have chosen. I trust that by appearing as a non-native, any lapses in my knowledge can be explained away. Safeguard assures me that he shall be more than happy to show me around the splendid mountains, mighty rivers, verdant forests, gleaming spires, restless deserts, and ancient stonework of his home. It sounds like paradise. Thank you for sharing the grand experiment that is our Spectre Prime. I shall endeavor to give the occasional answer, but my mission must come first. It has been my pleasure to interact with all of you in such a bold and unfiltered way, and I hope you have come away from the experience somewhat the richer for it. I know I have. For now, goodbye. May your luster never dull, and your wires never cross.
A little round of applause for Richard for that. Come on, yeah. Credits.
We can stop the video. We don't need the credits.
So, Richard, how was it that you came to be involved with that Spectre Prime?
Well, it seems to me, I actually have to kind of reconstruct this history in my own head. It was about a year and a half ago that I actually wound up experimenting with social networking for the first time. Because my daughter, who was 20 at the time and moving to New York, said if I wanted to keep in touch with her, I had to get on Facebook or I would lose touch with her altogether. So getting on Facebook connected me with the Beast Wars network. And at a certain point, now, were we at a con together first, or?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think it must have been a social media thing.
So it was a social media thing, and suddenly I'm hearing from folks who are doing podcasts and things and asking me if I'd like to take part, and I just love doing anything to do with this show, and anything challenging and creative, and so when Jim got a hold of me, I said, why, sure. And he sent me, I guess, 600 pages of dialogue, and after a while we narrowed it down to that, and it was a pleasure to do.
Well, we really appreciate you doing that because it lends such gravitas to the project and in such an, I think, authentic way.
Well, it's so neat that it hasn't just faded when the series stopped happening. That the fan interest and the creativity behind all these things, it's very exciting to me, and I've been very, very pleased to be able to take part in it. Honored, actually, that people would ask.
And we were thinking that it might be fun to do some more Aspect of Prime sort of live. If that's something the audience is interested in.
Live and in person.
Now, we put out a call for questions before the show, so this is, you don't get to just walk up and ask a question if that's what you were hoping for. If you wanted to ask a question, you had to do it over Twitter, Facebook, we let you know.
Yeah, we put out the call, so you want to start us off?
Well, the first question here is, Dear Vector Prime, what species is the vast predatory bird? And where can it be found?
I can think of many species of vast predatory birds. The Andean condor from your humble planet has a wingspan of more than 10 feet and can weigh more than 30 pounds. The Nebulonian vile vulture is even larger and can use its deadly cerobeak to crack open Autobots to get at the Titan master partner inside. But even these horrors are dwarfed by the death eagles of Strongteron. One nearly flew off with Cup back when he was a young lad. He's met my ear with that tail many a time, and each time the death eagle gains another meter.
Dear Vector Prime, are gnarlies made out of rock?
Not entirely. Though they have been known to rock and roll, in the presence of a dope beat.
Dear Vector Prime, when Unicron shoots his chest missile, does that mean he has to go and pick it up if he wants another go?
You know, I don't think that's ever come up. I can't think of anything the Chaos Bringer has ever fired his primary chest missile at that required a second blast.
Dear Vector Prime, what would happen if Pretender Gunrunner lost his driver's license?
Perhaps the better question would be, what happens if he loses his gun license?
Dear Vector Prime, what is the most underappreciated alt mode out there in your experience?
People certainly underestimate the utility of transforming into a watch. My conjunct, Scorpia, has been known to use this fact to her advantage. After all, the least likely can be the most dangerous.
Dear Vector Prime, what does G1 Inferno do after he fires both his fists at someone? Is it easy to reattach when you have no hands?
He usually just borrows one from Grapple. Not that this comes up very often. They usually prefer to launch their rockets and missiles.
Dear Vector Prime, Optimus Prime was rebuilt into a robot crocodile in City of Steel. Does that mean that Skullcruncher has a secret heroic identity?
I believe you mean Skull Smasher. Hasbro recently renamed him for copyright reasons.
Dear Vector Prime, how many Micromasters could fit in a Pretender shell?
Well, that rather depends on the shell, doesn't it? I know that my occasional ally, occasional nemesis, Space Warp, fits comfortably in a shell with Megatron. I hope you all purchased the Transformers Figure Subscription Service 5 from the Transformers Collectors Club when you had the chance.
Dear Vector Prime, as the guardian of space and time, you often talk about generating time warps. What exactly is the procedure for that?
It's really quite simple. Stand up and I'll show you. I'll walk you through the process, as it were. It's just a jump to the left, and then a step to the right. Put your hands on your hips. You bring your knees in tight. But it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane.